Today we're going to take a look at the Amazon Fire Max 11. Let's get to it. The Amazon Fire Max 11 is an Android 11 based tablet that runs Amazon's custom Fire OS 8. It has an 11-inch screen, a 2.2 GHz octa-core processor, and has 4 gigs of RAM. This model has 128 gigs of storage, but Amazon has a 64 gig option as well. Couple of items worth calling out. The 11-inch HD LCD touchscreen runs at a resolution of 2000 by 1200 at 410 nits of brightness. It has front and rear-facing 8-megapixel cameras, a fingerprint scanner that doubles as a power button. It supports Bluetooth 5.3, uses Wi-Fi 6, has a USB-C port, and has a microSD card slot. It has an aluminum body with rounded corners and weighs in at just a hair over a pound, which is comparable to a 9th gen iPad. If you're familiar with the Fire HD10, you'll notice that the Fire Max 11 is slightly larger but also slightly thinner than its predecessor. Unlike its predecessor though, the aluminum body combined with the overall design gives the Fire Max 11 a very premium feel. First off, let's talk about the UBI. For folks who are unfamiliar with what an UBI is, it's the out-of-box experience you have from the time you take the device out of its packaging up to the point where you can actually use the device for its core purpose or for what it was advertised as. The out-of-box experience for the Fire Max 11 is straightforward both in packaging and the tablet setup itself. Amazon tablets can come pre-registered to your account like this one was, so some of my info was already on the device, which makes setup a breeze. In total, I was at the main screen and using the tablet in under 10 minutes, which included taking it out of the box. There were a couple of unnecessary screens during setup that had to do with selecting third-party apps to pre-install, and skipping these screens was easy enough, but since we paid for the no ads version of the tablet, it would have been nice to have an option to streamline setup and skip these entirely, because in an indirect way, these feel like ads for these apps. While Fire OS is a custom version of Android, the home screen experience is fairly standard for an Android device, with the main screen in the center, and swiping left or right takes you to additional screens that often have pre-installed widgets. Fire OS has customized widgets on each screen that have deep ties to the overall Amazon ecosystem, and this makes it hard to escape the feeling that you're constantly being advertised to with the default settings in place. The home screen has a search bar along the top that you can use to find content available on your tablet, along with web-based search results. There's a Continue and Discover widget just below the search bar that lets you pick up where you left off, as well as offer up ideas for content that might interest you. Below that, you'll find icons for the apps that you have installed, and you can rearrange these icons and drop them into folders as you see fit. If you prefer a cleaner look, you can disable the Continue and Discover widget by going to Settings, selecting Apps and Notifications, then selecting Amazon App Settings, and finally selecting Home Screens. From there, toggle both Recommendations and Continue and Discover row options off to remove those widgets from your main screens. This alone goes a long way in reducing the feeling of constant upselling while using the Fire Max 11. Swiping right takes you to the For You screen. Here you'll find lists for things like recently used apps, Echo integration, along with a host of app, book, and movie recommendations. There's a lot going on here, but for the most part, this screen is dedicated to offering up content from the Amazon ecosystem. I personally don't use this screen too much, but have a few family members who find new movies and books from this screen all the time. Swiping left takes you to the Library screen. This is essentially a series of widgets that group the content that you have access to across the Amazon ecosystem. While there's a lot to sift through here, you can toggle between all and download it to easily filter down to what you have on the device itself. And finally, there's the device dashboard. There's a little house-shaped button in the lower left that takes you to this screen. And this is a pretty handy little area if you have any home automation enabled via Amazon's Echo devices. You can access cameras, turn lights and plugs on and off, and interact with commonly used Echo routines from here. Once you start checking out content and moving around the device, you're going to notice two things right away. The screen looks great and everything feels smooth. The colors pop, and games and movies and comics look great. The brightness range is good for indoor use and maybe outside in a shaded area, but there's too much screen glare for use in the direct sunlight. I like to lower the brightness in the evening or use the blue shade feature, and the Fire Max 11 looks great in these low light scenarios. The speakers sound really good, but are lacking in the low end department. That's not to say that the overall sound is too tinny, rather that no one will mistake this for a proper speaker if you use the built-in speakers to listen to music. Otherwise, they were perfectly fine for audiobooks, podcasts, and gaming. And on the topic of gaming, game performance was excellent. Standards like Candy Crush, Monument, and Minecraft all played well, with no noticeable lag or stuttering, and some games even worked with the Luna controller with almost no setup. Speaking of Luna, the streaming service was excellent in our testing, but your mileage is definitely going to vary. We're in the Seattle area, and most streaming services work great here, Luna included. I turned on the Luna gamepad, opened the Luna app, and everything just worked. It's a pretty well integrated experience overall, though the game offering isn't as vast as something like Game Pass. Speaking of Game Pass, the app is available in the Amazon App Store, but there's no streaming option in the app itself. So if you're looking to stream Game Pass games on the Fire Max 11, you'll have to jump through a few more hoops. It's worth mentioning that I only did a single user setup here, but the Fire Max 11 supports multiple profiles, including child accounts. You're given the option to set up kid mode during setup, and while we opted out of that here, setting up a kid profile is pretty easy. Once you have multiple profiles set up, swapping between your main profile and a kid profile can be done in just a few swipes and button presses. You may have noticed that there's a lot of Amazon stuff on the screens that we just talked about, which speaks to the Amazon ecosystem here. Having an Amazon Prime membership gets the most value out of the Fire Max 11. As a Prime member, you have access to a lot of content by way of Amazon Video, Amazon Music, Kindle and Comixology, the Amazon shopping app itself, as well as seamless connection to all of your Echo devices. Folks without Prime will see the content, but won't be able to access it without a subscription or by purchasing the content individually. The Fire Max 11 only officially supports installing apps by way of the Amazon App Store. There are a lot of apps available, but there are some notable omissions. You don't have access to most Google apps like YouTube, Chrome, or Gmail, and while there are knockoff apps for most of these, you're definitely going to notice that they're not the real thing. The Fire Max 11 claims 14 hours of battery life in their marketing, and while I didn't scientifically measure this, I'm getting multiple days of use out of mine in between charges, which is a bit more than what I was getting on my Fire HD 10 Plus. I tend to read news and browse the internet in the mornings, watch a few YouTube videos or listen to podcasts throughout the day, and then either read a book or listen to music closer to bedtime. With this usage, I went from fully charged on Sunday to around 40% by Thursday. Not too bad at all. On the downside, charging is really slow. I plugged it into the bundled 9-watt charger when it was at about 25%, and it took nearly 4 hours to hit 99%. It's worth calling out that it accepts 15 watts of power, so if you have another device like a phone, then you might already have a charger that can cut that multi-hour recharge by about a third. Regardless, keep an eye on the battery and plan accordingly. At launch, Amazon released an official accessory called the keyboard case that you can buy separately or in one of their productivity bundles. It's a magnetic two-piece add-on where one piece connects to the back and the other to the side. When both are connected, the device looks and behaves like a laptop. The outside of each piece has a cloth-like texture that's reminiscent of denim. It's nice to the touch, but maybe don't spill anything on it. The back piece acts as an adjustable kickstand that's reminiscent of Microsoft Surface tablets. It has a decent range of movement and keeps the screen sturdy at any angle. The piece that contains the keyboard magnetically connects to the side of the tablet and there's zero setup required. Just snap it on and start using it. The trackpad supports gestures and the pointer speed is adjustable. And if you want it out of the picture entirely, there's a quick key combo that lets you turn it on and off in seconds. Microsoft 365 has a native app pre-installed on the Fire Max 11, and I already had an account, so setting it up was as simple as launching the app and logging into my Microsoft account. It supports Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Forms, PDFs, and a few others, and I use it to create and edit all of the documents that went into this video. The keyboard itself has a nice layout and doesn't feel cramped, but if I had to nitpick something, I'd call out the function key on the far left. My muscle memory has that key as a control key, so actions that I wanted to be control arrow left were often function arrow left, which are not the same. This aside, the keyboard feels really good and was easily on par with any of the Surface Snap-on keyboards that I've used in the past. Amazon also released a stylus for the Fire Max 11 at launch. It was easy to set up as well, where I put in the included battery and it simply started working. I'm not a big stylus guy, though I did follow a Bob Ross video once, but I do use them to take notes from time to time, and this one easily passed that test. I just opened an app like OneNote and started taking notes, and it was that simple. It magnetically attaches to the side of the tablet, so it's easy to store when you're not using it. So what are some of the downsides? As mentioned, it officially only supports apps that are available in the Amazon App Store, and there are some notable big hitters missing. The inability to install YouTube and Chrome alone could be deal breakers for a lot of people, and more on that in a minute. There's no headphone jack, so you're either going to have Bluetooth headphones, USB-C headphones, or a USB-C to 3.5 adapter handy. Silk Browser is the only browser available on the Fire Max 11. No Chrome, Edge, Firefox, or Opera in the Amazon App Store. Silk is actually an okay browser, but if you're used to syncing favorites and history and browser passwords across devices, then you're out of luck here. I also mentioned earlier that it takes a long time to charge, and thought that it's worth calling out here again in the downside section one more time. Upwards of 5 hours to top a tablet off is a considerable amount of time for something that you might use as an on-the-go device. I wanted to touch on the bit about YouTube and Chrome not being available in the Amazon App Store. While it's not officially supported, you can sideload all the apps needed to get Google services up and running on the Fire Max 11, and that's exactly what I did. For me, this makes the tablet a much better value because you get the best of both worlds, Amazon's integrated ecosystem and the entirety of what's on offer in Google's Play Store. Sideloading Google Apps isn't without its issues at times and can require a little maintenance here and there after setup, but for the most part, maintaining them is much easier than setting them up in the first place. For me, it's definitely worth it, but your experience with sideloading apps is going to be dependent on your comfort levels with taking tech stuff off its golden path, so to speak. Alright, so what are my final thoughts on this tablet? For me, the Fire Max 11 is daily driver worthy, and is now the only tablet that I use. It's easily Amazon's best Fire tablet yet. It looks, feels, and performs like a premium tablet, but with the cheapest model starting at $230, it comes in at a mid-range price. Google's Pixel tablet starts at $500, and the upcoming Galaxy Tab S9 starts at a whopping $800, making the Fire Max 11's price even more attractive. We have Amazon Prime and quite a bit of home automation tied to Echo devices. So this ups the value of a device like this for us, but also speaks to its potential downsides. If you don't really use the Amazon ecosystem and are dependent on the level of app availability found in the App Store or on the Google Play Store, then you're probably going to find using Fire Max 11 as somewhere between somewhat and very limiting. But if you're willing to roll up your sleeves and do a little manual sideloading, you can essentially make this a non-issue. Mostly. At the end of the day, the Fire Max 11 is an excellent tablet that's somewhat held back by its app offerings. If you're dependent on Google services and apps like Chrome and YouTube, or want the latest and greatest apps as they come out but are maybe uncomfortable with or unwilling to sideload apps, then the Fire Max 11 probably isn't for you. But if you're already in the Amazon ecosystem and are happy with those offerings, or don't mind sideloading apps to get some extra services set up, then the Fire Max 11 is almost unbeatable at this price point, and I highly recommend it in this scenario. And that about wraps things up. Please like this video if you found it useful, and subscribe to our channel if you want more content like this. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and we'll chat again soon.